The idea today is that we're going to go through from contract through the Stellar CLI to the TypeScript bindings through to an actual client interface. And I'm gonna give it a shot actually getting the client deployed onto the public internet. I don't have anything pre-written, so we're going to be shooting in the dark to an extent. But we won't be focusing on contract code, so we'll probably just try and get like a hello world or something, and call it good. But the idea of focusing on how to go from contract to an actual website that uses it, because I think that can be a little confusing for folks of how you actually accomplish that. So let's go ahead and kick off. I'm gonna open up. Let me. Oh, you know what I should do first? Well, no, we'll save that for last. Let's go to the good old developer docs. I'm not sharing anything. Let's turn that on.
Correct.
Let's turn this on. The good old developer docs, and hello to everyone else as well. Thank you so much for joining the DevRel Fun Time coding session of Mondays. Carson, I see you're there. Welcome. Feel free to jump on screen. I think you're allowed to just jump on. The priority here is certainly the DevRel team, so I would love, Carson, if you can jump on and as you have questions or need me to stop and clarify things. You and Elliot are the most important people in the world to me right now at this very moment. And so if you have questions or issues or something is not clear, please pause me and have me clarify. If you have general questions, this is the Stump Tyler session. So if you think you've got a question that I don't know the answer to, have at it. And then I will bring Silence up, who probably will know the answer. Okie dokie. So I'm in the developer docs where all good projects should start. And because I don't have code memorized for things, I'm going to try and remember how. I think I've got all my CLI stuff set up. You've got things for setting up your networks. This is like setting up the CLI pieces, but I want this bit right here. Look at that cute little check mark that pops up when you click copy. It's adorable. Let's make a new one of these guys. We're going to change directory into the desktop and then run stellar contract init. We'll just keep the nice Sorbonne hello world because I think that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to open up that directory in my code editor. All right. And this gives us a contracts directory, which has a pre-built contract. Go ahead.
We lost you for a minute.
That seems to always happen, and I'm not sure exactly why. Am I back?
You're back as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
Carson,
sometimes when I drop, my stream stops. So let me, if anybody cannot see my stream, leave a note.
It seems to be running fine
in the chat, and I'll reset it. Okay, great. Yeah, sorry for the hiccups. Part of me wonders if the stream has a really low network priority, and so when I download something, it chokes or something.
Yeah, that could be.
Who knows? I also think maybe my Dropbox is syncing. So let me pause. Who knows? Okay, well, I downloaded that and we got squiggles. Not sure what those squiggles mean. Looks like proc is missing. It's something. So this happens all of the time when you're developing Rust, where something Rust happens that produces red squiggles and you don't know why. There's certain things that you can try to do. The first one that I like to do is just remove my target, which I don't think this will solve anything because we downloaded a new project. Let me cd and do that first, and then do a remove of the directory of target. I'm also going to do a remove of the cargo lock file. And then I'm going to go to Rust Analyzer. Don't click, just hover. And then you can click Restart Server. I think maybe rebuild build dependencies will solve our problems. But there's also this nice little, if you're in VS Code, you can do Shift Command P and type in Rust Analyzer. And sometimes it's rebuild proc macros and build scripts, which you can see I've recently used because Rust be rusting. You can use that to rebuild things, and who knows, maybe you'll get lucky and your red squiggles will go away. Now don't get too excited. It's still doing Rust things. But it does look like we're starting to get some helpful bits and bobs. Wow, that looks like Chinese. Oh, there it is. It's back. We'll see once this finishes analyzing if we actually can run our tests and get a hello dev, I think is what the test is spitting out. So it looks like maybe we did resolve our issues. I think this is also running a pretty old version of the SDK. Yeah, we're on 7.6. This is 0.0, so we should probably go ahead and update that. If you're wondering where that guy came from, I have a package called, I think it's something cargo or TOML or something like that. I think it's, which will give me the package versions of things, which will be a nice little click to update so you know what version you need. I've got a couple of different packages. Obviously, I've got my Rust Analyzer. Make sure you're using the right one of those. There's another one. Well, these are actually included in the developer documentation when you're setting up. I think VS Code mentions these. The Rust Analyzer and then the code LLDB for debugging. And then I use that Rust package thing, which helps me find the versions. And so I know that I'm running an old version. So I'm going to go ahead and click to update to the newest one. Those will get picked up in the actual project because I'm using the workspace true flag, which pulls from that cargo TOML file. I don't ever use release with logs, so I like to typically delete that one just because I don't need it. The rest of this I think we will leave alone. Looks like our test did in fact pass. I did just update the Sorbonne SDK, so I might want to go back and do another remove of the target. Don't know if I really need to remove the lock. Do it anyway. We'll restart that server. I don't actually think I'm going to do anything on this contract, just to prove the point that we're going to, or to make sure we optimize for spending our time in client land. Which I'm going to use. I'm going to go back to the desktop for now. I'll keep this project open, but we're actually going to merge these two things together, I think. That's the way I like to do it. Mono repos for the win. I'm going to be using Astro. I really like Astro because it's like an agnostic front-end framework that allows you kind of natively, or they very much intentionally expect you to use many different front-end frameworks. So it's not, here's a framework that's vanilla, and then you plug in just React or just Vue or just Svelte, and those are your primary ones. The idea with Astro is quite a bit to be agnostic and allow you to have this concept of what I think they call them islands, where you can plug in many different types of front-end frameworks. Sometimes, you know, on Thursdays, I use Vue, and on Tuesdays, I might use Svelte, and other days, I might use vanilla. You never know. And you also might have a project where some of your team uses React, and you, like me, hate it and want to use something else. I have found Astro to be a good tool to kind of let your team or yourself and your various personalities use whatever they feel like using. So that's why I use Astro. It also is a spaceship theme, which I feel like is a bit on point for stellar development. Maybe that's the... but anyway, there's an install setup, npm create Astro latest. I'm actually going to use npm to get myself started. And I think they've got this, look at this kid. This guy is adorable. I don't know how you would ever use anything else. I don't think I want my project to be called Faithful Filament. I think I want it to be called, what was the name? Soroban Hello World. Soroban Hello World. We'll call this super. Include the sample files. Sure, why not? I do love TypeScript. I like to be strict. I will install dependencies. Actually, I probably shouldn't because I'm going to use PNPM, but that's fine. I don't want this to be I think I probably will want this to be a Git repository because I'm going to use Cloudflare later, but I'm going to say no for now because I can always run Git init manually. Look at that. They even tell you what I already knew. So we'll let that run, do its thing. It is installing with npm. I'm going to redo this with pnpm. You could use yarn if you're still using that. Bun is my favorite now. I say it's my favorite right after I said I'm going to use pnpm. Sometimes Bun struggles in other services that don't support them yet. Like I think Cloudflare might actually be supporting Bun as a build target now, or a build package manager, but I have had mixed results where with PNPM I have had great success, and I prefer anything other than NPM and Yarn because those are ancient and just not that good anymore, in my professional, if somewhat not humble, opinion. We'll go ahead and open that. We'll cd in there and we'll change directory into this project. Let's make sure this is not quite so tiny. And then, like I said, I actually want to open up a new tab here for just a second, cd back, and then I want to open Soroban Hello World because I want to copy from this over to this. And I'm going to rename this to just the Soroban stuff. So all of my Soroban bits and bobs will be in there. And so I'm kind of crafting my mono repo at the moment. So if I change, I'm going to make a new tab and cd into my Soroban directory. So I could run things like cargo test, and it will run my tests. Actually, I have no idea if those tests will work because it may not be targeting the WASM piece, but so that's all going to be my contract stuff. I do think I need, there's a nice little pro tip. When you have your VS Code editor, sometimes it won't let you, if you're at root and there's a subdirectory that contains your cargo Rust stuff, it won't pick it up. So if I went in here, I'm not sure if this will happen, but if I go in here, it wouldn't actually pick up like what string is, like the typing stuff wouldn't work. But you can include explicitly inside VS Code where these things live, and then it will pick it up. I'm going to pull up my passkey kit just because I have the actual code for what that should look like. And I'll drop it into VS Code. It is called a settings.json. And then there's this Rust analyzer, and then you can link projects. So if you have a mono repo that has a lot of linked projects and you want to get the type ahead and you're having trouble, looks like mine's doing okay. So maybe that's fine, but I'm going to go ahead and explicitly say my Rust related stuff exists inside of Soroban, and it all comes from this root cargo toml file. And maybe that won't break anything, and you'll sometimes looked like it was doing fine for me, but if you've got a mono repo that has a lot of nested cargo toml files, that's a nice little pro tip for including the Rust analyzer and explicitly connecting your linked projects. Oops. All right. So I've got a contract. We've got our source, which I think if we go look at this, I need to remove my node modules and my package lock because I want to use PNPM. So it's going to delete those, and then I'll do p npm install. And that will go faster and just be better. Let's see, I think the command to actually run this is both dev and start do the same thing. So we'll do pnpm run start. That will start our dev server out on localhost 4321. So we can see we've got our little demo site that's got nothing on it at the moment, which is all fine. We don't actually need anything. The bit that I need is to allow Svelte support. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So if I, let me open up this one. I think it's Astro add Svelte. I'm also going to add Tailwind because I just want to make front-end devs angry. Yes, I want to add all those pieces. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, and that should add all of the Tailwind and Svelte bits. So what I can do now is make myself a Svelte component, which I'm actually just going to write a single Svelte component. I'm going to call it home. I'm going to delete the card. Layout, I think I will probably keep mostly the same. I may delete the HTMLs or the styling. I think I really care about any of that because I'm just going to make a very vanilla site. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. Probably something with my TypeScript. Index, I'm going to delete. Actually, no, I'll change that to home. And this will be home Svelte. And then inside main, I'm going to delete everything except for this new home. And I'm going to delete all those. And then I'll do classic hello world. Hello world. And then let's check this again. There we go. All right, so we basically wiped out the vanilla stuff, and now we have our basic Svelte app. This is probably not it's not the preferred way where you kind of don't use anything Astro and you replace entire pages with components, but that's the way we're doing it right now, and it's not a terrible way. But essentially it's going to let me write the whole app inside Svelte. If you were to have like Astro or React components or Vue components, you would write those components and then include them as these component pieces. Again, you might not wipe out a whole page for that. You may have a header and a sidebar, and your buddy's really loves React and he's in charge of the footer, and so he'll build a component that's the footer that spins up to the React component. But I'm just going to wipe the whole thing and use a Svelte for our home page. Okie dokie. I'm going to get my script piece started, and I'm going to use the language TypeScript. Let's just include a variable. I'm going to call it, I don't know, str. And this is going to say hello world. Just to kind of give you an example of how Svelte works. It's very similar to how everything else works. You just have variables and then you can import them. So essentially what we're going to be doing is taking our contract, importing it, and then beginning to call it in script and show pieces of it in the UI. So the first thing we need to do is probably go back to our contract and get some things built and deployed so that we have a contract out in like testnet. And then we can build out a TypeScript bindings library and then import that into our client, into our website, so that we can begin to call the functions, or in this case function, which is this hello function. So let's go ahead and do that. We're in our Sorbonne directory. I'm going to do stellar contract build, which will do a bunch of Rust things to compile out our WebAssembly file, which we can then use to deploy a new contract onto the test network. Once we have that, I'm going to generate the TypeScript bindings for this contract. We need elevator music for Rust builds. So I can push a button and it plays some elevator music while Rust does its thing. Or maybe I need a book of dad jokes. Okay, that built. If we were to go to look at our target, you've got target. WASM 32 unknown. That's what we just built. That's a release there for that. Fun fact, if you didn't know, that folder name comes from this. So if you had a different profile and you called it kale, which that I think won't work now when well, maybe it will, because I think I can do help and it lets me target a, oh no, just packages. Well, I think, oh, wait. No, that's features.
Profile.
What's that? Oh,
Profile.
profile. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Profile, and we called it kale. Did I save that? Yes. Kale is missing. I have a feeling that probably, oh, that's, no, that is right. I'm not sure. I have a feeling
It might be the contract cargo toml. Or is that what this is?
No, it's not. But I don't think, does cargo toml
Is there
have
something?
its own
No, you're right.
release? I have a feeling that maybe, let's see what this says. I think let me try this. Cargo, what was it called? Build target WASM 32 unknown.
And then I think it's profile here as well.
Huh, same error.
Missing an inherits directive.
I wonder if it actually is important what the name is.
Try inherits default. Or what is it?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Release. Yeah, that probably does it.
So now inside of WASM 32 unknown, we get a kale release, which is kind of an interesting way to split out different packages or versions of things if you need. I do hope sometime we get into indexing, and there's an instance where you may want to build like the same version of something but call it something different. One you would deploy to the Zephyr like shadow network, which and then one you would deploy to the Stellar network. So that's kind of an interesting thing to know. But anyway, let's go back to release. Look at that. I learned something new today as well. Thank you. Okay. So let's go ahead and build that. One little nice little tip is, I don't know why, rumor has it that no one knows, sometimes when you build a project, it won't overwrite what you currently have built. So it's a good idea to rm, rf, target, wasm, whatever profile you're trying to use. So I will build like a make file for this, and I will include that as like the first step of my make file. I can't tell you how many hours I have lost building something that didn't actually build, which is mad frustrating. I'm going to get rid of that whole thing because I don't want kale to confuse me later. So I recommend always, you don't have to delete everything. So like a lot of people just do cargo clean, but that tosses everything, which then will make your build times really, really long, versus just removing the target piece that you actually released, and that will make your build times ensure that they always build something new, but not rebuild like every single dependency. Okay, so now we've got our contract built. Oops. Now I need to generate that. Well, let's go ahead and deploy it. Stellar contract deploy wasm wams target wasm release. What is this called? Well, actually I have no idea. Is it just hello world? Yep. Wasm network. Wow. Testnet source. I have a source. These are your keys in your network. Testnet, I think you get for free when you install. Your sources, you'll have to set up the keys yourself, but I have one called default that I will use to deploy my new contract. Wow, that was fast. I almost said I don't get paid to say that, but then I thought I kind of actually do get paid to say that. We're going to install that. I'm going to make, I actually have no idea what the env is supposed to be called. I think it might be like just env, but I'm going to paste that there for now because I know I'm going to need that later. Okay, we've deployed the contract. That is the contract, so we can do things like, yeah, okay, Stellar. Sometimes we have to play a drinking game that whenever I type Sorbonne as the command instead of Stellar, we drink. Stellar contract, invoke ID, network, testnet, source default. We can type the -- help, and that'll give out the commands, and we can see that we only have the one, which is hello. Type in hello and then help again, and it's got a 2. And I know that that takes a string argument because it gives us right here string example 2, and then you give it the string, which I'm not going to type all that because I think I don't need to. And I get back the vector hello world. We could do what the test did, which was dev, and get back hello dev. So that's cool, that's all working, but that's not a dApp, that's a CLI bot, and we don't want to send that to our clients, we want to send them a website. So for that, we need to generate Stellar contract bindings TypeScript. And then we need a network, testnet. Now here's a little pro tip. I don't use the contract. I use the WebAssembly. Because I tend to write my contracts and test them at the same time inside of a library, which means I would have to like be updating. It essentially means that I have to redeploy the contract all the time. So the contract ID actually becomes kind of useless. And so generating bindings while including an ID is not that helpful. So I need to put in a request to like update this CLI piece, but you can include a WASM. I think it's actually WASM hash. It may just be WASM. Yeah. And you can target the target WASM release hello world WASM. And it's going to say you still need a contract ID, which I'm just going to use a throwaway one, and we'll call it nil because I'm tricky like that. And then we'll do output directory, and I'm going to call this hello world SDK. And that will generate our TypeScript bindings. That was a lot to remember. So usually at this point is when I'm like, you know what I should do? I should make a makefile. And I should do one called binding. I don't know if it'll work, and I'm sure I could replace out some of these things with dynamic elements, but at least I don't want to have to remember how to write out that string by hand, so I'm going to copy and paste that. I also know that I did this one, so I'm going to do a deploy as well while I'm here. And part of that deploy, remember, was a remove RF of the target, WebAssembly unknown release. I think that was the name of it. Yeah, cool. I think that's just about it. We should have our Hello World SDK. It's sitting inside of the Sorbonne directory, which is probably fine. I can target it. Let's go ahead and target. Let's import that. So let's get that to a place where we can actually import it into our file here. We might think we could do something like import.
And we lost him again. How fun. Does anybody else seem to?
Are we back?
We lost you again.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Are we back?
We're back.
Strange.
Welcome.
I wonder if it's my internet.
It was like right after you saved the makefile,
Okay.
thereabouts.
I did a lot of cool stuff between then and when I came back. What we're basically trying to do now is get the import, get this Hello World SDK imported into our package. It's an NPM package, and I want to get it into my client. So that's what we're trying to do right now. We could try and do some fancy .. / try and find Sorbonne Hello World SDK, and that might work. But ultimately what I want to do is get it into the package JSON, because then it's being tracked by NPM, which makes it much, much easier to do things like imports and builds later when we go to do deploys. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say I want my Hello World SDK, and this is going to come from Sorbonne Hello World SDK, and I'm going to try and do inside of my root here pnpm install. Let's see if that works. We got this Hello World SDK 000, which is correct, I think. So now we can do Hello World SDK. I'm going to make sure, sometimes you have to do this svelte restart language server. I have a feeling, I've had to do this a lot, and I have a feeling that there's something wonky, either about mono repos or something where the thing does not want to reload all the time because it's like trying to grab too much or something. I'm not sure. But if you run into issues where you import something and you can't get the types for it, it's that Command-Shift-P to bring up the command palette, and then svelte restart language server if you're using svelte. Okay, we've got our client from our Hello World SDK, and if you're ever confused, it's like an NPM package, and I think we kind of have this mental model in our heads that we don't fiddle or edit NPM packages. Well, this is a local NPM package, and you probably are going to have to edit it. I highly suggest that you get used to going in here and tweaking things. But ultimately, it's good for like documentation. So we know that it exports a client, and that's what is going to contain our hello function, which is what we're going to eventually want to call. So that's why I know it exports a client, because I have spent time in the client interface, or in like what the actual package of Hello World SDK exports. There's not a lot in here, so it's not like it's generating a massive package, which at the end of the day, this is also a really simple contract, but even a big contract isn't going to have a very big export for the bindings. So I'm going to make a new contract, and it's going to be new client, and it's going to have a couple of arguments like my RPC URL. Oh, look at that. My type ahead thinks it's coming from near.org. Oh dear. Let's see. I need to go to my developer documentation. I think we've got a data RPC, ecosystem RPC providers, FutureNet and Testnet. Here's the Testnet one. I should probably include this as an environment variable, but we're cooking with gas, and I don't have time for that. Contract ID, same thing. That'll eventually come from our env, but I know that it's that because that's what I exported. And then I think I still need a network passphrase, which is going to be networks. But instead of, you can, these RPC, or these bindings, they export everything from the SDK, and I actually don't like that. They do this export *** stuff. But I tend to have a lot of bindings, more than just one in my contracts. And so I always end up removing all of this stuff and grabbing that from the installed package itself. So I'm going to need to add pnpm add stellar SDK. And then I pull it in from here. That's interesting. I pulled in an old one. Oh, this is the wrong. It added it to, that was the SDK, or I'm sorry, the bindings. This one is the at the root of the project. So that's what I just added, which you will notice that it's a 12.3.0. This one is 12.1.0, so this one can be out of date, which is another reason you're going to have to get used to going into your package so that you can update dependencies, maybe change those dependencies. Your life will be so much easier if you make these version numbers, particularly for the SDK, the Stellar SDK, the same. So whatever the root is or whatever the common one is, it's the same for everything. You can do a npm overrides, and then put in your @stellar SDK, and then do a $sign and pull in this one. So then it will override anywhere that it finds a Stellar SDK in a dependency. It will supply the one that is at root. So that's a way you can get around that if you've got a old version of something or you don't have control for some reason over a Stellar SDK package that comes in. You can do an override of a dependency and get the guaranteed whatever the root is. Mileage may vary because it's JavaScript, and JavaScript is awful sometimes. Network. So I need to import. This is another. It should start doing type ahead for this stuff, which it's not. So I'm curious if I do a svelte restart, if it will start to pick that up. And yes, it does. Networks, testnet. Okay, at this point we should have our contract, which would allow us to do things like contract. We do a dot, we get the type aheads, we can see our hello. This one takes an argument. We can do a command click, which will then take us in to our actual type. We see that 2 is the argument that it's expecting and 2 is a string. Very good. We'll put in a string. We'll just hard code that to world for now. I've deleted my string here, so I'm going to just remove that and say hello world again for a moment. This will need to be awaited, and let's just see what that looks like with a good old-fashioned console log. Now I do know something about the way this is working. First, we can't use an await at a root level, so let's make a function, and we'll call this say hello. And we'll put this all inside of that. Oop. And then I will just run say hello. Now there is something to notice. I don't know if this will bug, but it might. Or you may not see anything in the console log, and that's because Astro is awesome and tries to write server-side applications. So my guess is if we went in here, we would inside the console, we would actually see this assembled transaction, which is awesome. However, it is not what we want. So there's a nice little Astro thing that we can do to ensure that this component only gets loaded on the client. And I do not remember. I don't have a clue what that's supposed to be. Elliot, do you remember?
For Astro? No, I do not.
Okay. Well, it's inside of these, maybe it's rendering modes. There's these islands that you get, and depending on, I wonder if I do.
Is it client colon load?
Maybe. It's supposed to be something along these lines. Whoops. I think if I follow the Astro Islands piece, there's a link that sends me where I need to go. Client directives, that's what it's called. So it's, yes, you were right. Client load, and then depending on which one you're using, I need, client only. So it loads this component on the client only. It's not going to try and do any server-side rendering. So if we were to reboot this, and then refresh this, we get our client assembled transaction in the, whoa, you're not that blind. We get in the client side, the browser, and not in the server. Which you may want it in the server, but for purpose of our examples, I do not. I want it here so I can inspect it more easily. You get a whole lot of stuff in this assembled transaction, including things like you can do simulations. Sometimes it will simulate for you. You get everything's here. transactions that you need to sign. You can do simulations. You can get simulation results. Just loads and loads of cool stuff inside of this assembled transaction. I need the super. Another nice thing is that these should be typed. It's not. And I have a feeling that this, oh, there we go. Built, so that's the built transaction. You also have a raw transaction, which it gives you all the typing information. So that's what comes back from transaction builder. Built gives you the actual assembled transaction. I think we even get simulation responses. So we could get the result. And because, for example, or I'm sorry, it's a fact, there's no state that's being changed inside of this contract. There's no require auth in this. It's literally just calling hello and returning a result. We don't actually need to do, we don't need to submit the transaction. We can just run a simulation for the transaction and get back the result. We certainly could do a res sign, or we could do sign and send, which would submit the transaction. But for our purposes today, given time, I'm just going to do res.result. I'm going to log that. See what that looks like. And we get back our vector, which has now been converted to the JavaScript type array, and it's a hello world. So obviously, if you're doing things where you actually need to change state or do some authentication or just need it up on chain, you would want to do some signing and submitting. But this is just doing simulation, which you can see if you run the network tab. Oops, when this loads. Let me just look at the fetch. You can see that simulation that's been sent off to my RPC that I put in there. We get back to transaction data, like all of this XDR is coming back. So there's the results object that will contain that vector. That doesn't look like what we want, which is one of the reasons the TypeScript bindings is so nice. It converts all of that simulation mumbo jumbo into actual types that we can call more easily and then use. So I'm going to just quickly turn this into a button. We'll say button, say hello, and this function will call on click, say hello, and then instead of logging the result, I'm going to alert. Let me actually refresh. Oop. I think I might be stuck in a loop. That or I need to close that because I think it's not running because I've got this at the top and I need to not have it at the top. This doesn't look like a button because I've got Tailwind. So let me make this look just a little bit more like a button.
Tyler's internet connection. Hey, Jeremy.
Are we down again?
We just came back. I think it was just for a second.
Okay.
Or 20.
All right. It's so interesting because I go out and I have no idea until I'm back. And so it's like too late. That's the problem with latency. Okay. Now we've got our button and we can say hello and it gives us back the array, which then just converts it into its string form with its joining with a comma. So that's cool. We could add, if we wanted to modify that, we could add, what's the prompt? Enter your name. We get back passing in a custom argument. Okay, so that is basic. That's like the fundamentals. Doesn't look like this is guaranteed to be a string, so I should probably throw an error. If this is why you use TypeScript, friends. If there's no to, I'm just going to return. So that way, if we don't put something in, it won't keep running. Hello, Bob. All right. So that's a dApp. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's going to change the world, very obviously. So let's go for our last few minutes. Let's see if we can actually get this deployed on the internet for everyone to enjoy so I can change the world together. There's not a whole lot of customization here, so I don't actually think we're going to need an environment file. So that's super nice. Most of the time when I deploy to Cloudflare, I will use Git. I may end up having to use Git, but I also know that they recently added the ability to deploy straight from a Wrangler TOML file. Wrangler's like their CLI. So there's a chance that will actually be able to deploy just from Wrangler and then do like Wrangler pages deploy or something like that. There's also a chance that I don't have my Svelte configuration correct. I've deployed many times, but I feel like I've deployed it in 7 different ways. So this will be the adventurous part of the story. You can definitely get your site online after this point. It's just a matter of the specifics. So we have successfully created a dApp, which pulls in our contract and then allows us to use it. If we do modifications to our contract, we just redeploy or rebuild. We build the contract, redeploy the contract, and then rebuild our bindings for the contract. It's also very important to remember if you make a change to your TypeScript bindings that you do a reinstall of your contract. If you're having issues where it's like, I changed something, but it's not pulling up, I would just do a remove rf node modules pnpm lock, and then do a fresh install. If you make modifications, for example, in Hello World, like let's say I switch, we may run out of time here, but I think this is probably more valuable anyway. If we are inside of Hello World SDK, and let's say I want to change from using npm, which is what it's using now, to pnpm, I would do a similar sort of thing. Let's say I want to update this as well. This is also probably out of date. That one's fine. Let's say I want to go into source and remove some items that are not being used. I can go and clean up things. I can do a format my document to just clean the code up a little bit. Do all that stuff. I need to make sure I do pnpm install to get all the packages for that. Oop, that one. Oh, that is the Hello World SDK. And then I need to make sure I do pnpm run build. So you actually do use the distribution folder here when you're importing it. And so if you make a change, you need to make sure you rerun the build command to get the updated version of your bindings package. So let's go back to the root. And then we can do pnpm install. Remember, I removed everything previously, so now I'm going to be installing fresh. And you should see in the install dependencies that Hello World SDK has been installed again. You can try things like force, but I have found that to not actually rebuild the lock file. And because it doesn't reuse the lock file, it doesn't actually pull in new code. I don't know why Force wouldn't do that, but I'm not a package managing package builder, so I don't actually know. I just know it doesn't do that. Okay, so that's all done. That's all good. I'm going to basically put a pin and say mission accomplished. We successfully built a contract and got it connected with our client, which is awesome. We have a website that works. Now I'm going to attempt to get this online, and our mileage may vary. So just keep that in mind. I know that I need, well, I'm pretty sure I can use a wrangler.toml file. And I'm at wasn't that long ago that I built something that I deployed. But I can't remember what it was, unfortunately. Oh, probably it was the that thing I did last week, the safeguard stuff, or 2 weeks ago. That one might have. It doesn't look like it's probably using Git. Let's see if we can find anything let me just real quick before I use this. Let me see what happens when I just do. Let me make sure I'm up to date. npm install global wrangler. Get the latest on this. And then I think there's a special command to deploy a pages app. But I think you have to build it first, and that may cause us some problems. So let's go ahead and run a build here. pnpm run build. That'll get us a directory of the built project. Oh, we got some interesting errors. Oh, I know what this is. This is what we get when we use strict. It is what it says it is. It is strict. And a couple of these, let me restart my TypeScript server. It should actually give me some helps here, maybe. Doesn't look like it. Well, we can read these. 6.3, result must be of type, which we don't even use result, so we don't need to import that. Client options is a type, so we can say type. Result is declared but never used. So I think that might clear those errors. Nice. Okay, so that should give us a distribution directory. And this is what we actually are trying to deploy onto Cloudflare pages. So if we do Wrangler deploy, I think it might be actually pages deploy. It might give us some information on what we need to do next. Pages output directory, and we probably need a name because I have this file. If I didn't have this file, I might not actually need this, but I'm going to say that's the distribution directory, and the name I'm going to give Soroban Hello World Super. And let's see what happens when we do deploy again. Yes, I want to create a new project. The production branch name. It doesn't have a branch name. This is where I think our mileage may start to vary. Okay. Interesting. That seems like maybe it worked. I don't think I need those numbers because I think that's it might actually let me deploy that or use that. Pull that over here. Don't forget to vote, y'all. Google's letting us know. This also might take a minute because I think it has to distribute across their network. It may not be as fast as it gives us. It should still be fast. After it probably fails first. Let's try Safari. I don't think this is a project issue. I think this is a DNS issue. We could try the actual number. Who knows? Maybe they take priority over the number. Yeah, that was what I was. I'm going to go over to another screen and actually look at my Cloudflare. I don't know what kind of secrets it might leak, but I'm going to look over on this other screen. Everything's looking good. Yeah, I think it's just a DNS thing and it'll clear up in a moment. There are instances, if you deploy this via Git, it will, the one big problem you're going to have is that this distribution directory is needed in order to import it from this file, Hello World SDK. It's going to look for that distribution directory because package.json inside of that SDK says that that's where the export is. And so if you ignore it, which this git ignore does, it ignores the distribution directory. It will try to pick up a package that doesn't exist because this distribution. So either A, you need to build it during the build flow inside of your CI/CD or your build process on the server, or just don't ignore because the actual files inside here are quite small. Don't ignore the distribution directory. So you could do, yes, fine, ignore the distribution directory, but not inside of Soroban. Hello World SDK distribution. And that will ensure that this distribution directory actually gets pushed to Get. so that when the npm install or pnpm install is trying to install and then build your app, you will actually be able to find this distribution directory with your actual TypeScript binding. The best way, if you can, of course, is to not include the distribution directory, but actually to build as part of the install. But again, mileage may vary. Let's see if these are working again yet. It looks like it is. Let's try Chrome. Yep. Say hello. My name is Bob. Hello, Bob. There we go. We've got a website that works. It's amazing. Everyone can go and say hello inside of Astro. We've all accomplished something incredible today. We've changed the world. We allow people can say hello to themselves, which, sometimes we need that. Yes, so go and, build something more interesting and change the world. You now know how to build those contracts, get them compiled, deployed, get the TypeScript bindings built, get them connected to a client-side component, and build and deploy a website. Look at that, all in less than an hour. Congratulations, we're all. Okay, that was a lot of talking. Do we have any questions? I see the chat has had chatter. I'm sure Elliot has been keeping track, though. Is there anything that I need to reply?
One of the questions was sort of conceptually, what if your contract backend stuff is in a separate repo from your front end stuff?
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle bindings that way? Like, do you bind and keep them in the front end repo or the back end repo, or it could kind of like a million different ways.
Yeah, it really is up to you. The way that I like to do it, well, it really depends. There's ways with like npm and bun and pnpm where you can basically make a local package that exists on your machine and then allows you to create symlinks when you're like installing a package from a completely separate repo. The obvious issue is, great, it works on my machine, but then when you go to deploy it, it'll need to get it from somewhere else. So oftentimes if I'm building an app that needs access to TypeScript bindings, I will make an npm package, and then I will actually deploy the npm package to npm. This is what I do with the passkey kit, which I think is here. Oh, shoot. It's everywhere. Let me make, I think I borked my system. Why is this not letting me select it? It's very strange. Well, that is super weird. I wonder if it's because I'm like recording or something. Weird. Yeah, I have no idea what I did to my machine, but essentially inside of the passkey kit, there's a couple of commands where I, pnpm publish workspaces or whatever it might be, and then actually get a package deployed to npm, which is kind of cool for two reasons. First, it lets you import it anywhere you need it, lets you version it, which is super nice if you're making a lot of updates to your contract, and it lets other people import. So not everybody has to run TypeScript bindings for packages they didn't author. So the author of the protocol or the contract can also maintain the npm bindings for it. Anybody could create the bindings, but the creator can also make the bindings and then make them available on npm. And then you may have this situation that I have in a lot of my applications where I'll have 5 different TypeScript bindings. One for the Stellar Asset contract, one for my contract, one for the blend protocol, or who knows what all contracts I might have, but there will often be many. But I don't have to do all the bindings myself. If the package already exists on npm, I can just install the TypeScript binding. Another example, oh my goodness, I think my screen is just busted. Let me see if I stop sharing and then start sharing again. No, my screen is just broken. That is so, I've never had that happen before. Where like my whole screen is just, I can't interact with anything on the screen anymore.
That's funny.
There is, if you look up on NPM and you look up, oh, maybe it's working now. I can't drag, but I can type. Nope, I can't type anymore. That screen's just broken. If you go to NPM and you type in, I think it's SAC SDK, you can get the Stellar Asset Contract TypeScript bindings. And then you can have a single NPM package for all of the tokens on Stellar, which is sick. Good question. Other questions?
What? I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sorry. Tupui.xlm. Mentioned there's like you have to have the network and the contract ID in the bindings. Like it would be nice if that could be inside like an environment. Like if you could set your Stellar, I guess that, correct me if I'm wrong here, the bindings command doesn't make use of like your environment variable for network passphrase or that kind of thing.
It does. Well, I think it does. Man, I can't. I need to figure out why this screen is borked, because this is important to show. But I have a feeling that if I click, I think it might be QuickTime. So I'm going to answer this question, and it will not be recorded. Oh, I think I'm still wrong. Let me try and shut my screen off. And nope, that also doesn't work. I've already tried to. I'm not even sharing my.
Correct.
Wow, I have no idea. If you,
You want me to try?
Maybe I can share it. Here, hold on. I got another idea. There's 2 ways to kill a bird with a stone. Wait, something like that.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
That's how it goes. Give me a second. I'm going to try and switch over to a different screen because I think it's something with this particular.
He's clarified. I mean, that I don't get why we should have it at all part of the bindings, because in the end, that part is dynamic. So if you deploy to NPM, this is bound to a specific network and contract ID. That is true. He's right.
Okay, I think I might be back. Can you see my screen?
Yes. And it looks like it's responding.
Inside of the SDK for a bindings, you have this networks object. This is where I like passed nil. So you can include a bunch of different networks. So you could have a bindings that includes multiple different networks. So different contracts for different networks and passphrases. And then all you would have to do when you're instantiating your client would then be to do ... networks, which come from the SDK. And there's one called Testnet. So I don't even think I need to include the network pass, or I do need to include the network passphrase, but it comes from this networks object. So you don't have to have like a different NPM package for every single network. But because these can be done manually and I'm doing development all the time, I tend to not use this object. But once you're stable and you're really deploying to NPM and you don't really intend to, or expect the contract to change much, then you might have an object with multiple different networks, one for testnet, one for the main network, maybe one for FutureNet, with all of the deployed contract IDs for those specific networks. And then when somebody's going to actually instantiate your client for that bindings library, they can just do ... and then whatever network they're currently connected to. The only thing that they always have to include is the RPC URL, which who knows what that'll be. On testnet, everybody might use the same thing, but that's not something that you provide as a service. That's something somebody else.
Right.
So hopefully that is helpful. Cool.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending again. I appreciate you all. It's always a good time. I don't know what we'll get into next week. Feel free to put in requests. There's so many things we could talk about. I know I've been into this. I've got to call it out because I know, Elliot, if you haven't fiddled with this yet, this FCM miner that everybody's playing with right now.
I've seen this, but I haven't done anything with it yet.
Oh my goodness, it's been a blast. I think there's some discussion because GPU miners have entered the chat, and so that's been crazy. But basically what happened is Enrique put out this proof of work token for Sorbonne.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fred built a miner that he open sourced that then just started this chain reaction of everybody actually starting to mine with a CPU, and then some, I think then Fred put out a GPU miner. And it's just been a lot of fun. It's a fun way to like do some Stellar Sorbonne related stuff, but not actually have to write contracts, but still kind of get into the code. There's a lot of conversation happening over on the Stellar Global channel. Let me see if I can find the actual chat for this. I'm just going to shill the Stellar Global right now because it's super, super fun. Yes, rumor has it that he may be working a new version of this that doesn't allow for GPUs to run away with everything. I also have a proposal out there for trying to balance this a little bit more, but it reminds me, it's been a long time since I've felt the feelings that I used to feel in the Stellar Quest days. And this is getting us back to that coding puzzle vibe. So if that's something anyone's interested, I've had a lot of fun playing with that over the weekend. All right. Well,
amazing.
This was awesome. We're 8 minutes over. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Have a fantastic rest of the day. We will catch you all later.
Bye, everybody.